Today, our guest is Mike Colyer, CEO of Foundry, whose Foundry USA pool now captures nearly one-third of global block production and anchors institutional liquidity for digital currency groups' ecosystem. Since taking the helm in October 2019, Colyer has architected a full-stack hash infrastructure platform encompassing pool services, miner management software, aftermarket firmware, and mining site operations, with scaling headcount beyond 150 people. In today's dialogue, he delivers an insider's readout on post-halving economics, supply chain arbitrage, and policy vectors steering Bitcoin's next-generation compute grid. Mike, welcome to Digital Gold.
Yeah, JP, great to be here.
So, how did you find out about Bitcoin mining? Let's start there.
Oh, wow. My gosh, it's been about 8 years. In other industries for most of my career, it was June of 2017, I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and discovered, I guess I rediscovered Bitcoin because I knew Bitcoin had existed, but never really knew much about it. And we went on vacation, I read a book and it was talking about the future of mankind and technology. And I came back from vacation and literally read an article about Bitcoin and I was like, wow, this is still here. At the time it was trading at like, I don't know, $2,800 or $3,000 or something like that. And I was just like, I can't believe this is what they were talking about in the book. This exists today, right? And I'm like, I got to learn more. So I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and I read the white paper, didn't understand it. So I started Googling a whole bunch of things, trying to learn. And one thing led to another. I live in Rochester, New York, which is Western New York. I found a blockchain meetup group in Buffalo. And for an entire year, every Tuesday, I would drive to Buffalo for an 8 a.m. meeting with a bunch of just random people who are interested in the ecosystem. And I was kind of the old person in the room and I'd take a notepad and I would listen to everything they're saying and I'd go home and I'd Google it all. So one of those sessions, we were talking about mining. And so then I went down the mining rabbit hole and learned all about mining. And it became, well, you know how it is with this industry. Like once you start, it's hard to stop. And I've shared the story before, but my wife had, at that point in time, I'd been working for like 20 years. And she literally said, hey, just take the summer off and like, let's just enjoy the summer. And I literally sat at my computer for like 15 hours a day, trying to find out anything and everything I could about this industry. And at the time, it was like the ICO craze and there was all kinds, ETH was blowing up. So I spent a little time trading. Like I was like day trading, which is not, it's not who I am. I'm like, I hate this. I want to build something. Like I want to contribute. I really had this like deep desire to want to contribute to this ecosystem. And it's been 8 years and I can't imagine doing anything else.
And so I would say a few things on that. The first one is if you haven't been to a meetup, you need to go to one. They're a great way to meet your community. That's how I also learned, Mike. I was in high school in 2013 and 14 back then and just going to meetups every single Thursday night at a bar, wasn't even able to drink yet, just sneaking into the meetup. And for a year, just talking to people, learning from all these different types of people, from people that are into the technology, people that are into the economics, people that are into the software side of things. So if you're a listener and you haven't been to a local meetup, do it. It'll change your life forever and help you understand Bitcoin farther.
Hey, JP, this group of people, and I'm still friends with many of them, just some of the smartest people I've ever run into. They were on the bleeding edge and they came from all walks of life. And it made it so interesting because some people were like hardcore technologists. Other people were like investors. People were like just speculators, like they were just, and you get this mix of people in the room and it really led to some amazing conversations and it's been fun. It's part of my story. I would say I was like when I was in college, right? You were talking about you discovered Bitcoin when you were in high school. So when I was in college, the internet came out, like the first browsers showed up in college, not when I was in high school, literally when I'm in college. And when I distinctly remember the first time I used like Mosaic browser. And it was just one of these of like, wow, this changes everything. I forget, I was 19 or 20 or something like that. It just fundamentally changed the way I started thinking about the world of what the possibilities were. And I was too chicken to move to Silicon Valley. You had to move to Silicon Valley to be part of that internet revolution really at the time. And I didn't want to move to California. So I went to GE instead. I went through their leadership program, and it was great. It was an amazing experience, and I met amazing people and lifelong friends, and it was probably the right thing for me. But when I learned about the idea of Bitcoin and this decentralization and this idea that anyone, anywhere in the world can participate, you don't need permission, and you can do it from any place, I was like instantly drawn to it. And I'm like, I'm not going to miss this technology wave.
Well, you weren't instantly drawn to it. You were thought about it, and then you said, I'm going to go back and research. What most people do. That's like normal, I feel like, for a lot of people.
You're exactly right. It's a journey, right? Like I love when I talk to people about crypto, and most of the time I avoid the subject, right? Because I just don't want to get into all of it. But sometimes I lean in, and I find it amazing how hard it is for somebody to buy. Like today, you buy Bitcoin, it's pretty easy. Back in the day, it was really hard. Like you were signing up on these like weird exchanges, and you're like, I don't know if I want to put money on it. But today you can just open up Cash App and literally you can buy Bitcoin. Yeah. It's easier to buy Bitcoin than it is to go to Starbucks and buy coffee. Yet trying to get somebody to spend $20 to buy $20 worth of Bitcoin is the conversation, it's hilarious because you're like, they're like, I got to really think about this. I may need to ask permission. This is like a family decision. Like it's $20 worth of Bitcoin. It's mind blowing. But the fascinating thing is everybody who's actually made that, like, it's like stepping over the chasm, right? Like once they buy $20 worth of Bitcoin, they start researching it. They start reading about it. They start going down their own personal journey. And eventually, I don't know if I've met anybody who's gone down that journey and not arrived at the conclusion of, I don't own enough Bitcoin.
And it's amazing how everyone has the same journey, but I feel like there's always that blocker, like, I talked about it, I saw it, and then I was like, whoa, my eyes opened up, 14 hours on the computer. So let's jump into GE a little bit. What skills, leadership, training did you get from GE that you took to the Bitcoin mining space? Because you guys as Foundry, I mean, you're one of the largest private mining companies out here providing services to the space in a multitude of ways, and a lot of that's from your leadership.
Part of it's from my leadership. I think a bigger part is we have an amazing team at Foundry, right? So we were really able.
The culture starts with you, Mike.
Yeah, but the culture lives on with the team, right? And 100%. It's really like I love coming to work every day because of the people I work with. And everyone is like incredibly passionate about securing the Bitcoin network, and that makes it fun. In terms of GE, like I talked about missing the Silicon Valley kind of experience, and I went to GE, and quite frankly, it was probably the best thing that could have ever happened to me. So I worked at GE during the Jack Welch years. So I don't know, your audience probably has to look up who Jack Welch is, but GE at the time was the most profitable, most admired, like it was the company of the 90s, really, the 80s and 90s. And Jack Welch was like a really innovative leader. So I came in, we built locomotives. I went to the transportation business. So we built locomotives, and I had to move to Erie, Pennsylvania, right? There's not a lot of people that want to move to Erie, Pennsylvania. I didn't want to move there, but I had to if I wanted to take this job. And GE brought in like every year they'd bring in 50 kids from college into their different divisions. And we were all thrown in and we had to compete against each other. And we were on a 6-month rotational program where every 6 months we changed jobs. And it was very aggressive. You had to work really hard. Like for me, I came in, I'm like, oh my God, these people are way smarter than me. I shouldn't be here. They have better credentials, whatever. And for me, it was like, I'm going to just have to outwork them, right? Like that was my only option, was like, I got to get here before they get here, and I got to stay late. And I did. I put in the energy and effort and learned just a tremendous amount of skills. I even carry the GE value card in my wallet to this day. I mean, that was 30 years ago. I still carry it with me because it was really.
And do some of those values show up in Foundry today?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like,
what are they for people who might not?
I used to always go back to. Now you were going to put me on the spot. I should get the card out. I should show you the card.
Go for it.
Like, who carries a wallet anymore, right?
It's a big crypto wallet.
I even have pictures of my kids when they were little in my wallet. But, you know, like the GE card, right? You probably look it up online. But these were like, you got to come to work with energy, personal energy. because you got to be able to deal with the pace of change of what's happening in the world. And then you have to be able to energize others, right? So if you want to be a leader, you have to be able to get people excited about what you're trying to go accomplish and create this atmosphere that's invigorating. You got to have edge, where you got to be able to make the tough calls, make the tough decisions, and then you have to execute. At the end of the day, it's all about execution. And like those 4 E's kind of always stuck with me. And I don't use those 4 E's at Foundry, but we've kind of let that like bleed into kind of who we are. It is who I am. Like I found the company that matched who I was just naturally. And that, I guess that's why GE it resonated. So met some amazing people, did some incredible things. It was a lot of fun. And from a Bitcoin mining perspective, and it's different today than what it was 8 years ago, like there weren't a lot of, I would call like people with a lot of professional experience coming into the Bitcoin mining world, right? It was a lot of speculators. It was a younger crowd speculating, just like the gold rush or the wildcatters in West Texas. Like, he's like, yeah, oh, there's gold there in them hills. I'm going to run out there and start digging, right? And that's what Bitcoin mining is, or was. It was like, I found cheap energy. Run. Like, how do we set up a mining facility?
No permits, nothing.
Nothing. Like, just, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. It's changed. Like today, now there's, 20 plus publicly traded mining companies. They're worth literally billions of dollars. And we're bringing it, like, just a lot of like amazing people are coming into the industry, which is fantastic. It's wonderful.
No, I love that, I guess. And let's talk through Foundry. So you joined them, and then what pivotal milestones occurred, and how did you, I guess, what did you come into, the Foundry you came into, and then what was the Foundry you are at today?
Well, the Foundry didn't really exist, right? So I'm employee number 1. So as the story goes, I decided I wanted to go all in on the space. Talked to my wife, and she's like, go for it, which was super important for me to have that kind of support, because I literally was pivoting my 20 plus year career to go pursue this weird thing called Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining. Like, what is that? And so I worked with a small company here locally because I really thought Western New York should be like the mining capital of the world. We have a colder climate, right? We have tons of cheap electric hydropower. Really, the Buffalo Niagara region, to this day, I still am convinced it should be the mining capital of the world. Not West Texas, but here. Like, this is a very stable environment. Never did I imagine that New York State would do everything they possibly can to kill an industry, which still doesn't make any sense to me. But anyways, I digress. So I'm in an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. If you're running a company, it can be very lonely as the CEO of a business. So I think it's really important to build a network of people that are in a similar situation that you can trust and you can share. And there's organizations out there that kind of promote that. So YPO is one of them. EO is another one. Like, I highly recommend people joining EO. That's for like smaller businesses kind of getting off the ground. So I reached out to the YPO network, and I'm like, who else is crazy enough to be in Bitcoin mining? And found a few people. Turns out, like, the people that started Core, and today, like, I'd argue almost all, maybe not all, but the majority of the leaders of Bitcoin mining companies are actually YPO members, which is fascinating to me.
It's an interesting stat. I didn't know that.
And then I got a phone call that said there was a company that was interested in getting into Bitcoin mining. And I was at Core, and things were going really well. We were growing that business. They really wanted to go public at some point. And then I was like, I'm not that interested. But then they said it was DCG. And at the time I was like, wow, DCG wants to get into Bitcoin mining. Like, that really changes the game. So I flew down to New York, met with Barry. We hit it off. And Barry was basically like, here's a white sheet of paper. Figure out what we can do to help build the mining ecosystem in North America. So he was seeing large inflows of capital from institutional investors into Bitcoin. China really dominated the Bitcoin mining ecosystem, right? They made the machines. They had most of the hash rate. They had the pools. So there was this worry that this would become a Chinese dominated token, or people wouldn't invest in Bitcoin because it was run by the Chinese. And Barry's like, look, we have to get hash rate into North America. We have to balance this. And I want to figure out how we can help, go leverage the DCG balance sheet, its brand, its network, its connections. Here's a white sheet of paper. Tell me what we can do. And he said, we're going to call the company Foundry. So I was like, all right, that's the beginning of it.
So, Mike, you have the name, you have the white sheet of paper. What's on the paper? What did you put? How does this? Do you still have the original paper today? You want to pull it out of your wallet?
No, it's still blank. No, so we spent a couple months like brainstorming what to do. And for me, I was like, look, at the North American miners have built out the ecosystem, the infrastructure. This is October of 2019. So it was bear market, and it's a bear market. We didn't really experience the same bear market this time around. I think mostly because the public miners are able to print money from their ATMs. But back then, and you remember, you were around, like October of 2019, we weren't sure anyone was going to make it. Like, it was brutal. It was ugly.
It was a long bear market. I remember that.
And the halving was right around the corner. And it was just like, this is not going to end well. So everyone was cash poor, but they had rack space. So we built an equipment financing business. I said, hey, we could use the equipment as collateral. Nobody had done it yet. And to his credit, he was like, I love that idea. Let's go all in on that. And then COVID hit. And again, to Barry's credit, he said, hey, Mike, if you're going to do equipment financing, you probably should buy some machines. And I'm like, oh, yeah, good idea. I said, well, how many do you want me to buy? And he goes, I'd buy all you can buy. And I'm like, okay, that's different than what I'm used to in the mining space where no one has any money. So we started placing orders. And what we didn't know was there was a chip shortage at that point in time. And we were placing orders for the new M30S and the new S19s that weren't going to ship until post-halving. So COVID, market collapses and Bitcoin's back to $3,500 or something. And we're wiring tens of millions of dollars to China to jump to the front of the line to get machines. We had equipment financing. And I called everybody saying, I got machines, I got equipment financing. And the majority of people told me, your rates are too high, mining economics stink, these are new machines, and halving is right around the corner. No, thank you. And what was tough is Barry said, the only thing I don't want to be was a Bitcoin miner. And I remember I flew back down to New York. I sat in his office and I was like, hey, actually, I didn't fly back down to New York because it was COVID. So we got on a Teams call and he said, I'm like, no one took me up on my offer and I got a lot of machines coming. And he goes, well, I guess we'll be a Bitcoin miner. So that was the beginning of it. So we were the biggest Bitcoin miner in 2021. We didn't want to be.
Are you bigger than Genesis at that time?
Bigger than Genesis?
Genesis Digital,
Genesis, sorry.
Yeah.
Were we bigger than that? Yeah, I think we were. I think we were definitely the biggest one in North America.
Yeah.
For sure. I know we weren't the biggest globally because there were still really big Chinese miners at the time, even Bitmain.
But to your point, you had a lot of hash power. You're packing it. You guys are expanding.
We put it everywhere. I called everyone back up. They had rack space and we plugged in machines everywhere. And then, of course, the economics flipped in the back half of 2020. Everybody wanted to become a Bitcoin miner. We did not want to be the biggest. We wanted to build the ecosystem. And that's like the heart, I think, of Foundry is we continue to want to build out the ecosystem, make the ecosystem stronger. And Barry was very much like, think in terms of decades. He didn't care what happened month to month, quarter to quarter. He's like, this is going to be here for a long time. We had this vision that long-term energy companies and nation states would be the biggest miners and they needed trusted partners. So we wanted to be that trusted partner, which is why we launched the pool, because it was like the only option was really Chinese pools. So we launched the Foundry USA pool, and then we strategically sold the machines back into the miners so that they could get off the ground and get going and go public and raise more money. And we wanted to fuel that machine for it to get going. So yeah, it's been a wild ride. We never anticipated being the biggest pool in the world, but here we are. So now we're like, what else can we do to help the miners, right? So we've leaned very heavily into enterprise software solutions, running I'm not sure everyone really understands the technical lift to run a pool this size. It's massive. I mean, we're literally doing something that nobody else in the world has ever done, ever.
I mean,
When we
explain that to me because I think most people have no idea.
when we launched the pool, there was 100 exahash in the entire ecosystem. Today, well, so when we started growing, the network grew. When we became the biggest pool in the world, we captured about 30% of the market. We hit about 60 exahash at that point in time. And at 60 exahash, nobody had ever put 60 exahash through the pool technology. So Stratum servers, your relay networks, your infrastructure, right? Today, we run 280 exahash through our infrastructure.
Wow.
And that's, it's 280 billion guesses a second is what is basically being pumped through our pipes. So it's a lot. It's a lot to take care of. It's a lot to maintain. There's a lot of, responsibility there. And it's a key part of making the Bitcoin network work, right? So anyways, we're leaning into the expertise we built around that from a software development perspective to provide miner management software that can scale that. And we really focused on institutional customers. We're now leaning into firmware because we feel like there needs to be a really strong, stable aftermarket firmware product. And then the other part of our business was site services, where we said, hey, these miners, as they get bigger, they're going to want to outsource more of their back office. They're not going to want to have to deal with all the headaches of running facilities. And we said, hey, we think we can build that capability and do it better and do it at scale. And so we've been building that business for the last couple of years. So it's been fun.
I love it. I mean, you really highlighted some of the core businesses of Foundry. And I think one of the things I want to talk more about, Mike, is the pool, because it is such a core aspect of every miner's revenue stream. And you guys are someone who've done it differently, to your point, by building it from the ground up. Walk me through that development process. What type of hurdles came up and what any memorable moments you want to share that might be some behind the scenes that don't usually come out?
Memorable moments.
Like breaking 100 exahash, do you have a party?
I remember the first block we mined, November 3rd, 2020. I think we were like 3 days in. At that point in time, I think we had like 1%. We were 1% of the whole network ourselves as a miner, right? We were a pretty big miner, relatively speaking, at that time. And we threw all of it at trying to get the pool off the ground. And I want to say we went 3 days without mining a block at that point in time. And those 3 days, you're like, does the tech work? Does it not work? How much can we burn, right? Like, how much money can you burn? That's a lot. We're burning 1% of all exahash every day for 3 straight days. And I remember mining the first block and it was like, holy shit, we did it. It works. Like, we can mine a block. That's exciting. And then the variability is just, and that's the part that most miners really do not understand or comprehend, the variability around mining blocks, and which is also what makes the Bitcoin network so special. Since we've launched the pool, like, I have such a deeper understanding and admiration for the Bitcoin white paper. Like, I really, literally will go down as, I think, the greatest invention of our lifetime. And it'll probably take another 20 years for us to really appreciate what Satoshi was able to put together. Like, it really is incredible in terms of just even at the, like, people talk about like, oh, it's hard money and there's a 21 million cap, but the way mining works is just fascinating. And this idea of proof of work and connecting it to like reality, I think is so cool. The fact that it's driven purely by the software and it self-regulates, the fact that it can't be gamed, like, you can't game it. Like, you can't get an edge, which is mind-blowing to me. Anytime that like the new money's coming in or the new big money's coming in, like BlackRock coming in, and I listen to these guys talk about the Bitcoin network, and I'm like, they don't realize yet that they can't game the system.
Yeah.
Like, they still think that
Completely
somehow,
different.
some way they're going to get an edge. It's like, no, everyone, it's a fair playing field. And they're not used to that. They're not
Where's
used to
my
that.
edge? I paid for one.
Exactly. Like, I'm big enough. I'm sure. No, I mine 30% of all the blocks every day. There's no edge. And it's really hard to live with, but it's true. And it's amazing. Or the fact that it self-regulates. Like the difficulty adjustment, I think, is just this magical, it's so powerful. You talk about any other commodity out there, like oil. I mean, literally, you have a bunch of guys sitting around a table deciding what the price of oil is going to be and how much they're going to pump out of the ground, and they've got to come to some agreement. Not the Bitcoin network. Every 2016 blocks, the software decides whether it's going to get easier or harder based on how many people are participating.
Based on everyone's agreement on how many people are running their power bills.
It's a wild concept. So yeah, so I definitely think the journey is always more important than the actual destination, right? So building the team, working with everybody in terms of like their passion for securing the network is really cool. Like we take it very seriously. Like it's we play a very important role in the ecosystem, and we try to continue to help our customers make the most money they can. How do we make their lives easier, right? I've been lucky, and I kind of know most of the people in the space. I always give them a hard time because I'm like, you guys, I said, you go to bed every night. You don't worry about whether you mined a block or not, or whether you're going to get paid in the morning. I'm the one who has to like make sure that we got enough Bitcoin to pay you guys day in and day out. And I don't think they really appreciate the variability and the probabilistic nature of mining a block. Because
I guess so. What made you choose the payment strategy you choose, and what is the strategy for the Foundry pool when it comes to, is it pay per share? Can you talk more about that and kind of why you guys chose?
Like, I think one of the things that our customers appreciate is kind of the approach we took in terms of being trusted, transparent, SOC compliant. Like we kind of put in all of the things that we knew enterprise customers, publicly traded companies were going to need, including like, look, we had a lot of debate early on. We KYC'd, AML'd everyone into the pool. So it's not open for everybody. You have to pass through our screen. And let me tell you, that goes against everything Bitcoin stands for, right? It goes against all the ethos of Bitcoin. But we just said, hey, we didn't think US traded companies could mine alongside North Koreans and Iranians and whoever else the US says is not acceptable. Whether you agree with that or not, it doesn't matter. It's like, that's the law. So if you want to tap the capital markets, you've got to follow the law. So we chose to put a product in place that helped them do that. And it's worked. Yeah. What was your question?
You answered it, like how miners are paid and why you chose the payment mechanism.
Oh, so then, sorry, with the FPPS, that was kind of the standard at the time in the industry, and everyone expected it. We had to the Chinese dominated the market, so we had to match what they were doing for people to start to move over. And then today, we just went through a big exercise over the last 6+ months of really looking at the FPPS payment model and repricing it, basically, where we're like, geez, we're literally like, we got to pay the bills. I got to pay all these engineers. I got to be able to maintain the infrastructure. And the way it was priced, especially post-halving, it just didn't make any sense. So we had to go back and reprice it. So that's been... Can
you dive into that at all? Of like what you're priced at today now and maybe what you were before? Because I know for a while you guys had no fees on your pool.
Yeah, like when we got off the ground, when we started, we had to do the no fee model because
game market
was basically subsidizing that through AMP pool, right? So that's the difficult part. When you got someone like Bitmain, who is just this massive gorilla in the market that makes the machines, is the biggest miner, has the biggest pool. Like they can pull all kinds of levers to make money from the customer base. And so they chose to have the pool be like a loss leader for them, right? So the first kind of 2 years, we're like, all right, we kind of have to do that. And then we got to a point where we're like, okay, this business model is no longer, it's not sustainable. Like it literally, we can't do this for you. So we can either like turn it off, and everyone's like, don't turn it off. Oh my God, don't turn it off. And we're like, all right, and you gotta pay. Everyone's like, okay, you're right. We got to pay. And that's kind of where we're at. So, which is good. I mean, it is a super valuable service to the miners. And I think we do a really good job at it. So.
No, I agree with you. I have not been able to use the pool yet. It's never went through the KYC process, but I think that overall, I've heard amazing things.
What, you can't clear the KYC?
We could, but it's just, I don't know. I guess I got caught up in the co-branded Bitmain pools, I would say, for a while. And now I'm like, okay, what's the next move? But there's a lot of software development infrastructure that, that you build on top of a pool and its reporting techniques and its
Oh,
shares and
absolutely. Yeah.
worker management that it's
Well,
really hard to move is the reality of it.
yeah, I would say
Not impossible.
most people are very pleased when they move to Foundry.
Well, I'm open to being convinced, so we'll have to talk more about that offline. But Mike, I guess one of the things you mentioned there's like earlier in the episode, there's these big shifts that happen. And the first shift for you was your web browser. The second shift is Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining in the pool. And where I'm going with the third shift is AI. How is AI going to change running a mining facility? So not, oh, HPC running HPC servers, but using OptiFleet and your firmware and your site operations business that you guys have at Foundry. Where do you see AI really bringing an insane amount of value to the end customer who's running tens of thousands of servers, which we know is can be very labor intensive, both on the physical side, but also on the management side and the RMA process and the after sales and all of that.
Yeah, I was going to say that where AI is bringing the most value seems to be in the stock price of Bitcoin miners who are, in quotes, pivoting. Different topic than what you're asking, but the AI revolution is here, right? And most of my life, people have talked about AI, machine learning, and it was going to change the world and blah, blah, blah. And it never did, and never did, and never did, and never did. And then, like, really, when ChatGPT went live for people to use, like, in my mind, it will be more significant than the first browser that came out. And it'll be more significant than the first, like, PC that was ever, like, built. Like, the speed at which the change is coming at us is going to be breathtaking. And it's hard to even imagine the full impact of AI on everything we do. And I think I'm just an optimist where I really fundamentally believe that, like, the human species, we will figure out how to use this for the better. There'll be plenty of bad that comes with it, like any technology, but net, it will be way better for everybody. And it's exciting. So will it impact the mining space? 100%, right? And it will impact the mining space, I think, in the first phase will be like, how do you run the facilities more efficiently? How do you tune the chips more efficiently to the environment that you're in? Like, how do you integrate into the electrical grid in a more sophisticated way? Like, that's all of what's ahead of us. And look at the one thing that's very true about Bitcoin, about the Bitcoin algorithm, is that it's a drive to the lowest cost. It's a continuous grind to the lowest cost. And if you're not on that path of trying to figure out how to get to the lowest cost, you're going to get left behind, whether it's new machines, whether it's lower electricity prices, whether it's optimizing your operations. Like, it's a constant grind to get more efficient, and there's no, like, stopping it. So AI I think will be a really important component in, like, helping us figure out how to make that whole piece more efficient. And I like integrating with electrical grid, I think is probably one of the biggest next frontiers for us. Like, I've got a fundamental belief that Bitcoin mining, we're going to leave the kind of we've left actually the speculative phase of Bitcoin mining, becoming very institutionalized. I think it's going to become it's actually going to become part of the electrical grid. And Bitcoin miners will be treated more like a utility, where the utilities recognize this large base load that's an interruptible or intermittent load that they can fine tune. And it's happening. Like, we're seeing it. We're seeing it on a grand scale in, like, West Texas right now, right? Like, I literally can watch, I'm like, oh, must be hot in West Texas because the hash rate went boop.
How big of a drop is that? I mean, is that like 50 exahash, 100 exahash now?
Oh my God. Yeah. I was just looking. Yeah. I mean, it can drop 80 to 100 exahash.
And that's in 10 minutes now, 5 minutes still, or is it like over an hour? Because, I mean, people don't understand how many megawatts that is. So try to put that in perspective maybe for
Oh,
the
shit.
normal viewer.
You do the math. You put, how many megawatts is that?
I don't know. I mean, that could be 3,000 megawatts, maybe.
No.
Depending on your machines, 1,000 to 3,000. So is that too much power?
Yeah, it's probably close to a gigawatt worth of power, right?
I mean, because most people aren't running hydros. Most people are running S19s, right?
Yeah.
The
So,
standard model.
but yes, I mean, literally, there's close to a gigawatt worth of power that shuts off in West Texas to balance the Texas grid. Wild. Like the amount of batteries that it would require to do the same thing don't even exist, right?
They don't exist, but they're also not as good because they can't do as long as ramp down for or ramp up because they have a limited amount of duration. There's also tons of frequency control you can do that batteries can do as well, but they only have one revenue stream. And that's what I talked a lot about on my other episode with Lucas was like the multiple revenue streams that Bitcoin miners have from energy and Bitcoin. If you're a battery and you have low energy prices and you don't have volatility, you're not making money. Do utilities in New York, are they knocking on your door saying, Mike, we see the future. Bitcoin miners are resources.
Come on.
What's going to take them to get there?
You said New York. It's not happening in New York, right? New York will be the last, well, maybe California. New York and California will race to see who's the last one to adopt new technology. I will say, gosh, last summer, I was at the Bitcoin Park in Nashville, which is just an amazing organization, amazing spot. And we met with the CEO of TVA. And the CEO of the TVA 1 year ago spent the first 15 minutes telling me and some other CEOs of mining companies how important Bitcoin mining is to the TVA grid as this stabilizer, as this enabler. They run new transmission lines. They see how they could drop Bitcoin mining at the end of the transmission lines to monetize that deployment until the factories come in and somebody else wants to use that power. And you can then move the Bitcoin mining to like the next development. And it was one of those moments, JP, where I'm like, oh my God, we've been preaching this for 8 years. And now they're starting to talk back. Now they're preaching it to us. Like we're getting there, right? And look at utilities are the slowest changing organizations on the planet. So it'll probably be another 5 years, but it's happening. And every case study we have, it just continues to drive home the point that this is super important. And looking at some point, I think Bitcoin mining will penetrate the electrical grid to the point where you can't shut down Bitcoin mining. And I think that's, or the grid will collapse. But we need it. Like they got to work together, right? Like, and I think that'll usher in kind of a whole new world.
And to your point, we're always searching for the lowest cost power. And so what happens if these miners at higher cost energy sites start to have to turn off? Do the utilities have to rethink their energy rates because it is such a large impact or has become such a large impact? Or do we think that it'll just be a smaller kind of turning off and over time, or the upgrade cycle will always continue and 4-cent energy with Bitcoin price going through the roof will always be adequate to mine? Or do you truly believe, Mike, that 4.5-cent, 5-cent energy will at some point be too expensive in the near future to run a profitable mine?
So I think we're a long ways away from kind of that next step down in energy price, because we drop, especially in the United States, well, really globally, we've completely dropped the ball in terms of energy production. And I think we're going to see a resurgence of new energy production coming online. And I think some of that will be fueled by Bitcoin miners wanting to buy more energy. Some of it will be the AI, some of it will be just manufacturing coming back to the US, like, or just new technology like, nuclear power and such. So I think we need a whole lot of additional generation before electricity pricing can come down, right? But it will. And if you're not at the forefront of that when it happens, you will get left behind. So I think, for between 3.5 and 4.5 cent power is kind of what you're going to get in the United States. And I think anybody that says otherwise, as you've been around a long time, there's a catch, right?
Yeah.
If it sounds too good to be true, it is. It literally is too good to be true because there's some catch. Like, sure, you can get 2.5 cent power, but you have to curtail every 20 minutes.
Your machines won't last a year.
Your machines won't last. Like, run the numbers, that's okay. But the problem is every time you curtail your machine, you lose, 1% of your machines or something. And
And
so,
talking about like curtailments and reliability of systems, are you guys running hydro machines yet? Have you moved to immersion? I mean, let's talk through that iteration. And do you still see air cooling being around? Do you think it'll fall off? How are you viewing the landscape, knowing that you have a very deep insight into everyone using all this hash rate?
yeah, so we've experimented with a lot of different parts of it, like trying to figure out what's going to be the right solution. The bigger miners, I think, are way more advanced than we are in terms of the stuff we're doing around that. So it's, I look to whether it's CleanSpark or Riot or like how they're thinking about it, how they're deploying. I think naturally, immersion or direct to chip cooling seems like that is where the ultimate solution ends up. It's just way easier, way cleaner. It's simpler. I think it opens up all kinds of new opportunities for mining. If you're running a direct to chip operation, you can drop that into neighborhoods and cities and places, and it's not disruptive. As much as we'd like to believe you could, you can't put a 40-foot container of air-cooled machines anywhere near where somebody lives, right? It's just too freaking loud.
Yeah, I mean, even the dry wet coolers, they're still very loud. Like being above those, like it's different type of fans. To your point, it's not facing directly at a house and it's venting upwards, but they're not quiet yet.
And they're not as quiet. I think they're more acceptable because it's more like a background
Air conditioning.
noise.
Yeah.
It's kind of acceptable. Like there's plenty of noise pollution from building air conditioners and manufacturing plants and all that, and it's just kind of acceptable. And I think
not the
I think that
pitched like minor noise.
yeah, exactly. And it's like, what is that? And so, yeah, I mean, I always think about like you get all these charging stations for like Teslas, and for me, I'm like, well, why isn't there like a little mini box right next to every charging station that is mining Bitcoin? So when the cars are not charging, you're monetizing that power at that spot. And when the cars need it to charge, you're turning off your mining equipment, and it's all like an integrated system.
So Foundry, we talked about everything you guys do, but do you make rack space? Do you have your own internal development of that? The small box idea, that's kind of that could be Foundry's business.
Yeah. So last year, 2024, we spent a lot of time actually thinking about kind of how the business was going to evolve. We had actually climbed to like 300 employees, and we were into a lot of stuff. We were supporting decentralized infrastructure, a lot of different protocols. So it wasn't just Bitcoin. And we went through a big phase where we kind of split out those teams. So we were doing a lot around decentralized AI tech. We spun that out into a company called Yuma, which is a DCG portfolio. We took our labs team that was working on a lot of different protocols, and we integrated that with the DCG team. Then we took our self-mining business and we spun that out into a company called Fortitude. And Andrea Childs is the CEO of Fortitude. She was the number 2 employee, or I should say the second employee at Foundry. So she's worked with Foundry since the very beginning, been in the mining space for a long time, and she stepped over to be the CEO of that. And that self-mining business, Fortitude, is out there. They continue to buy machines. They're actually buying sites. They're like leaning into more that infrastructure side of the house. And then we provide services to them, right? So we try to make their life easier as a miner.
So Mike, I recently saw you spun off 2 mining subsidiaries or 2 subsidiaries from Foundry Digital. Can you talk more about the reasoning for that and the benefits that might come from those spinning out?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of aspects of that. One, from a Foundry perspective, it was getting rather difficult to explain everything we were doing anytime we were talking about Foundry because we were doing so many different aspects. And I think part of the idea was we can get a lot more focus and attention by spinning out these companies and giving the teams a very focused mission. And then I also think it gives DCG lots of optionality in terms of what they want to do with the businesses over time. And then for us with Foundry and the team at Foundry, it becomes a very clear mission, very focused mission in terms of continuing to support the North American mining ecosystem and help miners be more successful.
So with Yuma and Fortitude, what's the difference between them and why those 2 companies versus other industries or other things that Foundry is doing?
So Fortitude was their self-mining business. So they're really focused on actually mining, right? So they got equipment, they got plugged in around the country, and they're leaning into buying facilities and that aspect of building out the mining infrastructure. The one interesting thing with Fortitude is they call it venture mining because it's not all Bitcoin mining. They also mine other proof of work tokens. So you kind of, as they're talking to investors and as they look at the ecosystem, that there may be a different token that's a better token to mine. So they'll buy those machines and help support those other networks. Yuma is really focused on decentralized AI. So it's a very different world where you kind of got all these big centralized AI players like the hyperscalers. And there's this idea that, and there's technology available that says, can we build AI in a decentralized way? So I don't have to live under Mark Zuckerberg's rules or under Elon Musk's rules. We can do this in a decentralized way, kind of like the way the internet was built. And Yuma's all about trying to figure out how to advance that mission in life. So very different. And then Foundry is focused on supporting the North American Bitcoin miners.
They're adjunct businesses, but not necessarily directly supporting the North American Bitcoin mining that Foundry is.
Exactly. It's kind of a different purpose.
What is your take on different mining of altcoins, knowing that so much capital has gone into the Bitcoin mining, the pubcos, and maybe those companies aren't mining as profitable as a private miner who didn't have access to public markets, knowing that there could be saturated with the difficulty and actual profitability of Bitcoin mining, do you see more people coming into prop mining or other types of altcoin mining to supplement, the returns that Bitcoin mining used to provide?
If you think about it just from a kind of a return perspective, there's absolutely opportunity in the altcoin space, right? So there are other networks where it may not be as competitive from a mining perspective like Bitcoin. And if you're paying attention and you're engaged in those markets and you understand how they work, there's opportunity there for sure. I mean, we've proved it over the last 5 years but they're smaller markets. You're not going to get the massive returns that you get if you can scale Bitcoin mining, but you can get better returns on invested capital and you just can't deploy as much.
In those markets, I mean, when you're talking about foundries buying all these machines, working with all these manufacturers, what are some of the key learnings you have for other miners, private or public, when they're working with large manufacturers, knowing how important time to delivery and getting machines that don't have to be RMA'd immediately is to a miner?
I think it's one of the most challenging parts of our industry. And a lot of times you have to kind of bet against, we always talk about like zig when everyone else is zagging or zag when everyone else zigs, because you almost have to bet against kind of what everyone's thinking that you should do, right? So there's definitely times when I kind of view it like when nobody wants to buy Bitcoin mining equipment, it's probably a good time to buy Bitcoin mining equipment. And when everybody wants to buy Bitcoin mining equipment, it's probably too late to buy Bitcoin mining equipment. And it's true with the altcoin world as well. So I think the most important thing is you need to partner with people that you trust, who've been there, who've lived through the cycles, that understand kind of how the industry works, right? Like, JP, you've been doing this a long time. Like, I would trust working with you to procure machines or to deploy machines because you've been there, you've done it, you've learned. Like, we all have made the mistakes, but man, when you first get into Bitcoin mining, you don't really understand what you're going to get yourself into. And
exactly.
Yeah, work with trusted partners, right? So we need more people like you in the industry. So, and we're getting them. It's definitely a very different. I always joke because there was always like in the early days, there was always like this guy named Kevin. People were like buying machines from this guy named Kevin. Well, turns out it was like Kevin Zhang. He now works at Foundry, but he was like one of the people that folks trusted because he was a good guy. He was an honest guy. But it was always like in the early, like, who's Kevin? Like, we got to find Kevin.
Find the Kevin. I mean, and that's a lot of these, like to your point, the picks and shovels, the people, the cowboys of the industry. And then now it came the suits of the industry. And is it the princes now of the industry? Where are we going next as we scale mining to the energy space and to the nation states?
Look, I think the industry is going to continue to mature and there'll be bigger and bigger dollars deployed. And I think energy companies and utilities and nation states will continue to lean into Bitcoin mining. But what's great about Bitcoin mining is it's still open to anyone and everyone. So if you can get your hands on a machine and you've got, inexpensive power, you can be just as profitable as the big guys. And that's really powerful. It kind of keeps everyone honest.
As you mentioned, you can't cheat the system. I think that's one of the biggest explanations that I do with Bitcoin is like for a nation state, for a company, for an individual, it's all the same. We all have to use energy.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
Yeah. I mean, like the thought that like, oh, Marathon's going to take over the Bitcoin network. They're not. Even like, oh, Foundry's too big. We're not. Like if we were a bad actor, people would leave.
Yeah.
It's a really incredibly robust system. I would go back to like, we did have a nation state attack the Bitcoin network when China banned mining. And I think that was 21, right? Wasn't that the summer of 21?
Around there. Yeah.
It was like July of 21, I think. And you know what? The Bitcoin network didn't even blink. Like, who cares?
Block times went to like 12 minutes that week. And
for a little while, and over time it adjusted. And if you had machines plugged in, you made a bunch of money because hash rate dropped considerably. But the network kept going.
And Foundry did great with the pool. I mean, that was like probably an explosion.
Perfect timing for us. Yeah, like that definitely helped. That definitely helped. I think they'll get back into it, by the way.
The nation state themselves, or just the mining and
no, I mean, sectors? I think eventually China will open up mining more and more.
I mean, they're building so much energy; it makes sense for them.
It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
So, where do you see Bitcoin going as we kind of ended here in the next 6 months? End of year prediction, because why not? Bull market usually ends in December, January.
So, yeah, exactly. I think the price of Bitcoin is tied to the security budget. I don't know if we've ever talked about this before, but it just feels like there's this link. You'll only store so much value on a network with a certain amount of security. And that the security is defined by hash rate, and the dollars of that hash rate is the price of the equipment, it's the price of the infrastructure, and it's the energy you're consuming to create the Bitcoin. That kind of creates the security budget. So the Bitcoin price can't grow without the hash rate, the security growing, and they're kind of linked. And once in a while they get out of sync, and that becomes a huge opportunity for Bitcoin miners to either make a lot of money or lose a bunch of money. But I think they're constantly connected. So the last time Bitcoin peaked, which was like 69,000, I think the hash rate was like 160 or something like that. It was 160 exahash securing $1 trillion worth of assets. So today we have $2 trillion of assets secured. And that was a moment in time, right? Like,
yeah.
And then the market came way back down because I don't think there was enough security to maintain $1 trillion asset class. Today, you have $2 trillion stored on the network, and the hash rate is like 930 or something. Like you can start doing the math to figure out like how much more value can this network secure, or how much more value can be secured by this 900 exahash is the way I think about it. That's so just my little piece.
It's almost like this exahash can only be tied to so much, can only secure so much network value. And the reality is it's like it'll keep coming back to reality, and exahash will shift based on profitability.
Yeah. So based on that one particular metric, I think there's a lot of room for the price to move. And it'll probably get overblown, and then it'll come back down and it'll normalize. But
do you have a market cap that you think it would hit then if you want to use versus a price per Bitcoin? Do you think Bitcoin hits $5 trillion in value in the next year?
I think there's the potential for it definitely to double. Yeah. And it may be just a moment in time. I don't know if it'll stay there, but look at they continue to print more money. It's
the dollar, because Bitcoin priced in gold is still not at a new all-time like high when it comes to the $100,000 price point we had a few years ago or a few months ago.
I used to talk about it as like, geez, there's only $1 trillion stored in Bitcoin and there's 12 trillion stored in gold. And then I'm like, oh my God, today there's $22 trillion stored in gold. And I haven't looked at it in the last 2 months, so maybe it's even more than that. But it's like, holy shit, there's a lot of value stored in gold, and Bitcoin hasn't kept up.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy when you see how far their gold is from everything else, like all the tech companies. I was looking at Bitcoin's the number 6 asset, I think, in the world right now in terms of total value.
Yeah.
It's still got a
Wild.
long way to go.
Yep. Yep. So it'll be fun.
Well, thank you for the time, Mike. It's great as
Right.
always, and I'll have to see you at another conference.
Absolutely, JP. Thanks for the invite. And I'm glad you're doing these podcasts. It's fantastic.
I'm excited to have you on. And remember, guys, to mine on.